If you can't be quiet, I'll call you by name. I am my mother's daughter. Already got you a clap, Mom.
That's good.
So, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. When you have a dad as special as ours, you wonder if anyone else knows how special they are. But you do. So thank you for being here. I've been advised today that as the MC, I am in charge of limiting people and what they say, or you would go on forever. So I'm going to employ that technique with the very first speaker today. Happens to be my mother. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Dorothy Sleigh.
I'm overwhelmed with how many people are here today. Okay, there you go. About 5 years ago, I told Deryl I was going to talk at his funeral. He says, "You can't do that." And I said, "Well, you won't be here to stop me anyway." I think the funniest thing out of all of this is we're going through these papers and things that Deryl had kept over all these years. We find a little note and it says, "I would like Dorothy to read this at my funeral."
Oh!
Anyway, it goes like this. I am free. Don't grieve for me, for now I'm free. I followed the path that was laid for me. I took God's hand, do I hear him call? I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to love, to work or play. Tasks are left undone, but may stay that way. I found my peace at close of day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembering joy. A friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Oh yes, these things I too will miss. But be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of each tomorrow. My life was full, I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it with lingered grief. Lift up your hearts and share with me. I wanted God now and he set me free.
Oh, wow.
I want to tell you something. If Stacy tries to cut me off, boo her down. Boo her down. I told Deryl I was going to talk about his life. He was a wonderful husband and a great father to our children. He was born in 1925 in South Prairie, and his mother named him Deryl, and the Deryl is spelled D-E-R-Y-L, which is a little different. So I says to her one day, I said, "Where did you get the spelling on that name?" She says, "I got it out of a romance magazine." Anyway, his nickname growing up was Zeke. How that name ever got on him, but that's what the kids in South Prairie called him. When Deryl was born, or just before he was born, the Northern Pacific Rail main line ran through South Prairie. Coal was discovered in that area. There were two lumber mills, South Prairie Lumber Company and Broomfield Lumber Company. Bud Parton and Deryl played in the sawdust piles. They played in the piles of sand and gravel that were used for the railroad. They had a heck of a good time growing up. He grew up next to the Hodders, which was Chuck, Ruthie, and then there was a younger daughter too. And they've been friends all these years. He went to school in South Prairie. They had a three-story school down there. And believe it or not, the kids brought horses to school.
Wow.
And then he said at recess or lunchtime they'd have horse races.
Wow. That's
And I
awesome.
want to tell you this, Deryl was the only kid in his class that did not go on skip day with the rest of the class. And the teacher says, Deryl, why didn't you go? He says, because I knew I'd get a whipping when I got home. He had a paper route in South Prairie, which he bought from somebody for $5. In fact, there's a list of all of his clients from South Prairie that he had there. It's on a notebook piece of paper. 25 cents, 35 cents for the newspaper in that day and age. Anyway, he said once in a while, there was a couple of people in there I'd have to go back 3 or 4 times to get 25 cents. He picked up beer bottles on the weekends because they had a number of taverns down there, and he turned those in for money so that he and his sister and his mom and dad could go to the movies on the weekends in Enumclaw.
Oh.
Deryl loved picking raspberries and that in summertime at South Prairie. He loved swimming in the South Prairie Creek. And his love of berry picking carried on throughout the years. When after we were married, he's picking 20 gallons of those wild blackberries. And he'd have these old ladies that were his favorites, and they'd call him up and say, Deryl, where's my berries? But anyway, in high school, he was known for his bashfulness. And he willed that to Stan Zedek at graduation. He liked Mr. Orr, his ag teacher, and he was a delegate to Pullman, Washington under the ag program. And I want to tell you this, he was the only boy in the typing class. And would you believe he beat all the girls and they accused him of cheating? And I have to tell this to some of the students that are here that Deryl had in school. When Deryl was in high school, he would take an X rather than get up in front of the class to give an oral report.
Wow.
So when he began teaching school and they had oral reports and he knew some kid was having trouble standing up in front of the classroom, he would tell the student that you go stand in the back of the room, stand up to give your oral report, and then he'd tell the students, and the rest of you students, look at me.
Good idea.
High school sports. He loved his high school sports. He played football and baseball. Can you imagine him being a fullback at 135 pounds? Baseball, he loved baseball. He played second base. You know what he really liked about high school sports was that he could take a shower before he went home because they didn't have a bathroom in their house.
Wow.
He rode home on the running boards of many a car to get home to South Prairie after practice and at night after the ball games when they played away ball games. A couple of times he had to walk all the way to South Prairie from Buckley.
Jeez.
He grew up in a changing world. There was the flapper dress and the Charleston. Cars changed. The telephone. You had the party line telephones, and that went on. And then all of a sudden, we got these damn computers. Excuse me. What?
Tell us what you really think. Tell us what you really think.
Deryl joined the Navy after he graduated from high school. He was only 17 years old. He took his basic at Farragut, Idaho, and from there he was sent to Memphis, Tennessee for Morse code training. Then he went to Jacksonville, Florida, where they familiarized themselves for landing and taking off of battleships. He actually learned to fly he was on a torpedo plane and he was a radio man, and they learned to fly at night with no lights on. And this was all done at Martha's Vineyard in New York State. And I hate to tell you this, but they lost 19 kids while he was training.
Wow.
He he went to Hawaii from there, or their squadron went to Hawaii. They boarded the USS Bonhomme Richard, and they were sent to Guam ready to invade Japan. The A-bomb was dropped, and believe it or not, the ship and everybody on the ship got sent home. That was the end of the war at that time. He started college upon his discharge. He actually got out of the Navy a little bit early because the war had ended. And he started school at Washington State University.
Go Cougs!
But the food lines were so long, and they lived in Quonset huts because there were so many veterans coming back to go to school. And one day he said he was at the football game, and the next thing you know, there's a fire in one of the Quonset huts, and it was in his Quonset hut. Well, anyway, the mud was so bad that they brought in around the Quonset huts, that they brought in truckloads of planer ends, and they would throw them from one foot to the next so they could get through the mud to get to their thing. Well, anyway, 1 year that was enough, and he transferred to Western Washington University. And then he got tangled up with a few people from Buckley. There was the 4 Buckley boys. Slat Salzgiver, Stubby Smith, Art Swedren, and Deryl. And they all lived together at Amber Daniels Hall. And Deryl had a Model A coupe, and they would come back and forth from Bellingham to South Prairie so that they could play ball every weekend. But there was 4 of them. So what they did, somehow they could take the handle of the breakout or something, so that one kid had to sit on the floorboard.
Oh, wow.
It was just a coupe that he had. They didn't have seatbelts in those days. The first contract that he signed was with Carson, Washington, which is down on the Columbia River. He coached flag football and baseball as well. It was an elementary school. But the kids from Stevenson, which were 20 miles up the road and then 20 miles back, also went to that grade school. And the first day he had football practice, and the next thing I know, 20 minutes, he says, the kids are running for their lunch boxes. They're going to catch the bus because they got to ride home. Well, you know what Deryl did? All during football season, he loaded all of those kids in his car, drove them 20 miles after practice, and brought them home. And he did not get any compensation, except I had a wonderful time getting to know their parents, because he got invited out for dinner almost every night. His first year at Black Diamond, his contract read $4,900. And he was driving the bus to Enumclaw, which was included in that salary. He loved it. He loved Black Diamond. And he lived at South Prairie during that time and commuted from South Prairie to his teaching job. During this time, he ran around with friends, Don Brown, we also known as Breeder Brown, because he inseminated cows. And his friend Bob Gardella and Yonk Mitchell. They ran around, and they were going to dances all over, the Olympia, the Century Ballroom, wherever they could find a dance, trying to meet up with their sweetheart for life, I guess. Anyway, I met Deryl dancing at the Newaukum Grange. He had just come from Ruthie Hodder and his best friend Young Mitchell's wedding reception, which was next door to their house in South Prairie. And he was 3 sheets to the wind. Anyway, he and I danced up a storm. Well, then I was afraid to let him drive home because he had that much to drink. And so I talked my girlfriend, I drove Daryl's car, and she followed us all the way home to...
Now, those of you that know my mother, think about this, right? My dad's had too much to drink.
Well, anyway, this happened in the middle of August when I met him, and I used to
I don't
laugh
know.
because his friend Breeder Brown used to say, "Daryl, what the hell are you looking for? Miss America?" So after he started dating with me, he said, "Well, I got my Miss America."
Oh.
Well, after that Saturday night, believe it or not, Daryl wound up at my doorstep in Beezy Valley. And I don't know how he found out where I lived, but there he was. And the next thing I know, he's having a glass of wine with my dad. They really hit it off great. The spark was there at the time I met him, but I was in the process of joining the Air Force with my sister Mary. And we were scheduled to leave the first part of October, so I had about 6 weeks of dating in there with Daryl. And he tried to talk me out of it, and I said, "No, I'll always be sorry if I don't go." Anyway, we left. He tried to talk me out of it. I was gone for 3 years and 3 months during that time. And during that time, we corresponded with one another, and he invariably would write his letters to me with purple ink. "Pudgy, are you here? You used to carry him to the post office." Well, anyway, before Mary and I were sent overseas, we came home on leave the summer. And wouldn't you know it, he was in bed the whole summer, recuperating from a hepatitis outbreak that had happened in Black Diamond.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He was teaching the 6th grade in Black Diamond. I got discharged after a wonderful tour of duty in Europe, and we got married. I got out in December, and then we got married July 20th, 1957, and then he was teaching in Black Diamond, so we lived in the schoolhouse that the Black Diamond owned right below the ball field there in Black Diamond. Anyway, when we got married, he thought I was going to iron his shorts and socks. I says, "Brother, if you're going to have shorts and socks ironed, you're going to do them yourself." In 1959, he signed a contract in Enumclaw, and he wound up teaching the 5th grade at J.J. Smith School. Well, he was there, I don't know, just a couple of years, and Bob Campbell, who was the uncle of the Wetton twins, was the vice principal at the junior high school. And he talked to Daryl, and he said, "Daryl, why don't you come over to the junior high and teach?" He says, "I'd like to have you coach 7th grade football." So Daryl agreed to do that. He coached 7th grade football and primarily English. And some of the guys that were on his team was Ronnie Miller, Dr. Bob Raymond, and Brad Hansen.
Wow.
The hot spot for at that time in Daryl's and my life was the Wishbone Inn.
Oh, I remember that.
You know, in that day and age, teachers didn't go into taverns. You know, that was just a no-no. And I said, "This is a bunch of baloney." We liked to dance. They had a dance out there every Saturday night. So we went out there, had a beer, and danced all night. And all of a sudden, this little old gal comes up to Daryl, and she says, "Mr. Sleigh, can I have a PTA dance?" Anyway, Bob Campbell passed away then, and Daryl became the vice principal at the junior high for 2 years. And he said that was the worst job he ever had. Mostly he handled the problem kids. He was then sent out to Westwood Elementary School for 16 years, and up until almost the day he died, he heard parents tell him how grateful they were.
Break. Pause.
What's going on?
Bathroom.
Well, that's too bad, Donna. You better hurry up and pee.
He's recording it.
Anyway, Deryl met the buses coming in the morning, and he put the kids on the bus at night. And he had special names for the kids. He got to know them. He played ball with the kids on the playground. He shot for candy bars, basketball. And just when Deryl retired, some kid brought in a whole big box of Hershey candy bars that he owed Deryl. Deryl says, take them and give them to all your friends. And the funniest thing is, one of the funniest things that happened, I shouldn't even tell you this, but I'm going to.
I told you there comes a point.
Don't sit down. He had, I hope none of her relatives are here. Her name was Mrs. Humberstone, and she was Daryl's secretary when he went out to Westwood School. Well, our kids were 4, 5, 6 years old, you know. And so rather than disclose her name when he would talk to me about her on occasion, he'd say Mrs. Dinkelhofer. And I'll be darned.
No, it was Marty.
I don't know which one it was. Somebody, I think it was you, Stacy, answered the phone one day, and she turned around and bellowed at Dad, Mrs. Dinkelhofer wants to talk to you. He retired after, in 1985, after 35 years. He called me up one day and he said, Dorothy, he says, I got to get out of this. I said, well, hand in your resignation. I says, I'd rather have you alive than dead from stress. So anyway, it was interesting after we retired. These kids would come up to him, and some of them had beards, you know, and, oh, Mr. Sleigh, Mr. Sleigh. And Deryl would say, well, look at him. He'd say, well, you had that beard in the 4th grade. And one day, we were having lunch down at the Chinese joint in Auburn, and Red Lotus. Okay, well, anyway, he went to pay the bill. Sit down, Whit. He went to pay the bill, and this little girl was walking down the aisle with a bunch of dishes, and she says to him, Mister. And Deryl says, Mr. Sleigh. And so Deryl says to her, she says, well, who are you? She says, you should remember me. You used to call me Dimples. Another thing that happened quite often, the kids from Westwood School that he played on the playground with, they would call on Saturday mornings, and I'd answer the phone, and they says, Mrs. Sleigh, can Mr. Sleigh come and play ball with us?
Oh.
And he actually went out. He took some of our kids with him on occasion too, and they played ball out at Westwood School. During his college years, when he was playing for South Prairie and whatnot, he actually tried out for the Seattle Rainiers playing baseball. We've had some good times since we retired. We've been on many cruises. We've been to Branson 4 times. I guess a lot of you know how much he loved country western music. And one time we were in our little motorhome, and we happened to be coming through Reno, and several people in Enumclaw found out that we were coming home from Reno, and they had kids getting married. So the next thing I know, so-and-so wants 4 cases of this, 4 cases of that. Would you believe in a 21-foot motorhome, we had 21 cases of booze? It's a wonder we didn't get picked up by the thing. Anyway, another highlight in our lives was that Deryl and I were invited to attend the governor's ball. in Olympia when Ruth Gardner was went into office, and it was a very memorable case. In fact, one of the pictures was him in the black, he wore a tuxedo, believe it or not. We took our little motorhome and went down there with our tuxedos, and then we slept in a 21-foot motorhome afterwards. Probably the highlight of our trips was our trips to Medjugorje, which is in Bosnia-Herzegovina in Europe, and it was a 9-day pilgrimage thing that we went to. Supposedly, this started in 1982, where the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to 6 children, and it was just a marvelous trip, marvelous trip. Anyway, they have one hill is where you say the rosary all the way up. Then there was another hill called Cross Mountain that has a 30-ton cement cross on top of the hill, and we hiked up that, and you have the Stations of the Cross going up too. So anyway, we've done the rosary part, and we decided we were going to climb up Cross Mountain, and we got up at the top, and there was another couple there sitting on a bench, and so we kind of watched and looked around, and all of a sudden they're just like this, you know. So after they left, Deryl says, let's sit down here for a little bit. Deryl and I both saw sun twirl that day. And if you want to read about it, go read Medjugorje, The Message by Wayne Weigel. And that's the first book he wrote. Anyway, Deryl and I have had a wonderful life. We have some wonderful children here. If you haven't met them, they're sitting around these three tables out here. Introduce yourselves. Marty, stand up with your family. Come on. Beautiful kids. Stacy, get your kids to stand up. Where are they? Where's that baby?
Where's that baby?
They're out in there.
They're in the bar. Bar.
Yeah. Okay, Whitney, stand up with your honcho back. Kelly's still here? Yeah, okay, and your kids, stand up. Come on. Thank you. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I hope you've enjoyed my talk.
Yay!